All right, well, here we go. Oh my God. All right, y'all forgive me. Yeah, we've been trying to figure out the sound thing, and it's been going a little crazy. So I tried to figure out a backup plan, because this thing don't let me multi-stream. Doo, 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 doo. Hey, somebody watch? Yeah. Yeah, so if you know, we've been having problems with trying to get this to multi-stream like it's supposed to. So I ain't even fully set up, because I had intentions on coming on a little bit early, try to figure out all of this mess. So we gonna be doing a little bit of walking and talking as I complete my set hub. Got my warm blanket out. I don't got nothing to drink. I need some libations, which is definitely gonna be a big bucket of water with my cup at. Hope everyone had a good holiday. Mine was pretty alright. I got to spend time with family, and I thoroughly enjoyed that. Forget it. Was gonna have y'all watch me play some pool, but you ain't gonna mind. Well, I know this song is probably loud as hell in your ear, but be patient with me. I'm on a little early anyway, because normally we don't start. Well, it's supposed to start at 7, but I'll be winding up starting at like 7:02, 7:35. Yeah. So I finally took them. That wall behind me has been my idea wall. So all my creative ideas I was putting on that wall. But the thing about it is, I actually have artwork that could be on that wall. So I actually put it up. And let me see if I flip this camera around. Y'all can see what I got going on. Because this is my stuff, actually. I took these pictures. This summer I was in Milwaukee, of course. Of course. I'm proud of that. Listen, I went to one of them painting pours on my job, and we had to paint this thing from nothing. The only thing this thing started off with was the horizon line. So the rest of this is a real Andy creation. This is one of my favorites. This just seems so, yeah, it's dope. But I took that too. Nice little picture of the sky. And some more pictures. That's Milwaukee Museum. So yeah, don't mind, my wave drums and my pool sticks. And listen, I got a rack of dart guns. So you see darts around here. You see, I just keep the pistol on just in case somebody want to get froggy. But inside, it's looking real bad in there. I'm a big kid, so I play way too much. You see, I decorated. Since the last time that you came for Reiki, I'm actually settling in on the fact that some of my transition been a little crazy. So actually settling in on the fact that I'll probably be here for a little bit. So I might as well decorate the way I need to. Because with this travel position, I am not going to be too much worried about everything else. Okay, so I need just one more light. See, y'all don't know, man. Sometimes it'd be a lot of work to have these things popping. And I actually was, instead of setting up, I was spending my time trying to figure out a backup plan, which was using my desktop version and trying to um, set up a backup camera. I mean, yeah, use the backup camera as the main camera. And if you've been with me from the beginning, you know that I didn't do nothing but start that echo thing all over again. All right, I think it was Green that was working with us last night. Last time. Boop, boop, boop. Oh my God. All right, so I think it's in my office area. Okay. Well, what did I do with it? Now I gotta find my tablet. See, that's how you know my head has not been screwed on properly. Yeah, you know what? I do need to put that picture up, but I am waiting for, I want to get a frame for it. And my mom, you know what I mean? She was trying to be polite, trying to be a nice mom and give us a picture. But you know, I posted that picture on Instagram too. I'm proud of that picture. You know what I mean? So she gave me that picture. She was trying to be nice. So I definitely will put it somewhere. I'm about to get serious about decorating periods. So I'm about to put a whole bunch of no, she not sitting on the stereo. It's on my Instagram. It's one of them like life touch pictures. We just took a life picture. Oh, that would be dope. Okay. So now I know what you're talking about. I thought you were talking about the picture she gave me. But you talking about the picture I gave her. Oh no, that picture of her would be. Damn, you know what? That would be dope as hell. I got another picture that I want to get first. It's a picture of, I forgot, old boy from the Five Heartbeats. But somebody sent me that picture and said it reminds them of me. And dude it's one of the dopest pictures I've seen in my life. But he basically sitting by an all white Rolls Royce and got a lion laying in the the all white grass. And it's a dope picture. I plan on putting it right beside this Janis Joplin thing. So that's why that other space on the wall is always weirdly open. But I'm gonna put it up there. Oh, I put shit on my wall in my room too. So I finished with my room for the most part. But I'm not showing that. But that gray mirror that I had on the wall, I went ahead and put it. I mean, had leaning on the wall. That be messing up everybody's shroom trip. I went ahead and put that up. And then I don't know if you've seen it, but I had another sign in my room that said always kiss me goodnight. I put that up. And what else did I put up? I had this thing I done bought like 3 years ago. And no, I'm lying. I probably bought that thing 4 years ago. And I just couldn't figure out where to put it because I only bought one. And what it is kind of like, at best, it would need two. But I didn't know where to put it. So it just kind of sat leaning up against the wall. The theme. I lean things up against the wall. But I found a place in my room to put it. Maybe one day I'll show my room. You know, I'll be funny. Yeah. I'll be there. To see how I live, you got to come where I live. So, and it ain't that bad. It ain't that bad. As a matter of fact, one of my friends told me, like, you need to start calling this a flat. I was like, a flat, okay. Okay, so the last thing I was working on is that app to get the lighting together. Oh, shit. Listen, I'm all behind. Forgive me. All right. Here we go. This this is live all over the place. But hey, we on time, so I ain't even geeking. All these lights I got going. We on time. Doop doop doop. We on time. Turn on my salt lamp. What color we going with tonight? Tonight is the night. I did have. Oh yeah, that I guess that was this. Is this my first week? Second week? Second week of the job. Been amazing. Today was actually busy. I guess the real thing going on is I feel like my Reiki is contacting and touching more people. Um, because it's interesting how you can change somebody's life and sharing your story can affect them. But I got a friend that I've known for a long time, and she's in real estate, like not um selling houses, but management. You know what I mean? And you know, I told her, what's been going on with my life, and and as far as with transition and career and how long I didn't work in this transition and all of those things. And for her, she started crying. She was like, I thank you for even sharing that with me because I needed it. And of course, my next step was to be like, well, let me give you an energy reading. You know what I mean? I'm not, I'm always conscious of putting people's business out there. So I definitely didn't say much of our conversation, but the point of that was just sharing what I am going through, wound up being inspirational and giving her some encouragement that feeling like she's going to be able to survive her own transition that she's going through right now. And one thing I know, I'll say this: if you're not necessarily moving in your purpose and you've been out of it for a long time, sometimes life will just almost forgot I was live, but I was getting ready to get too comfortable. I about to take my pants off, man. Where you at? So, what color we going with tonight? I know it's yellow on the front because it already shows my face, but behind, boop, 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 we got red, red, red. Oh no, that red scene. Kind of liking it. No, maybe red, orange, and that ain't even fun. The yellow don't even look like a color. We rolling with green all the time. I don't know. I guess I was feeling red, so we're gonna roll with red tonight. The other lights are blue and yellow. So got my heated blanket, and it's I just thinking back. I'm all over the place right now, but thinking back to what you said, that picture of my mom, she's sitting beside a reel to reel. She said she was 20 years old in that picture. 20, was she 20? 20 or 18, one of them. But yeah, she looked fly. So that's where I get my fashion statements from. And my daddy, he was an old fly dude too, so he be dressing his butt off. He came up in his funeral. They tried to play his face since he wasn't there to stand up for himself. Talking about his wife taught him how to dress. Like shit. That bad bitch dressing. He one of the dudes that wore too much cologne. All right, so now we can get our reading started. 7:05. We're only a little bit late. Ooh, excuse me. I burned it. So I do like this reading app a little bit better. So thanks for that. And we are on chapter 3 of Ballad of Black Tom. Excuse me, let me get me a little. Tommy's best friend Buckeye arrived in Harlem in 1920 when he was 16 years old. At 14, he left the tiny Caribbean island of Montserrat to work on the Panama Canal. And from Panama, he made his way to the United States, to Harlem. He arrived expecting to do some of the same work as he done on canal construction, but soon found out what Otis Tester had long known. Negroes had no protection. Buckeye broke an ankle at the age of 17 and found himself out of day labor for 2 months. When he was ready to return, the job had been filled. And besides that, the ankle never healed well. He couldn't be on it for long hours, couldn't tote much weight without it giving out. Soon he found his way to Madame St. Clair and her famous numbers game. She hired him because she needed men from the Caribbean and who knew and would be trusted by the recent West Indian immigrants. Okay. Madame St. Clair evolved in changing times, and because of this, she thrived. The regular kickbacks to the local police also helped. Buckeye met Tommy Tester in this milieu. Tommy played a club where Buckeye made business. One evening, Buckeye sat next to Tommy at the bar and asked where he'd learned to sing so badly. Even talking about how terrible he sings. Um, did he take lessons or was it his natural gift? They became fast friends. I've gotten friends like that. I'll never forget when I moved to North Carolina, really. One of my first friends, dude looked me in my face and was like, "Hey, can you do this?" And all he did was wiggle his nose. And I wiggled my nose back. Like, oh man, you can sit here. We was friends after that. That's all it took. So it's funny how you used to be able to make friends so easy, but when you become an adult, it's 10 times more complicated. It ain't that easy at all. I'm trying to adjust this thing. Let me put it on my neck. I don't even care. Mm. Oh, all right. Now Tommy Tester led his father out the building and down the block. He returned home from the encounter with Robin Sedan, with Malone and the private detective, and felt himself in need of a night out. It took time to convince Otis to step out. Otis never left the apartment, hardly left his bedroom. He become like a dog gone in the dark, so he could die alone. But Tommy had different plans, or maybe he needed his father too much to let him go so easily. That's an interesting statement because I think I'm going through that with my mama now. All she pretty much do is just kind of, yeah, two things. And I had to tell her I need her to inject some more stuff in her life because she's just talking about the pain and dying now. And Jesus Christ, I need you to get some sun. Stop sitting up in that room. God dang. Whew, I don't know what I'm going to do. You know, these parents is bad kids. I get my looks from her as well. Hey, listen, I definitely am one of them kids that look like my mama and my daddy smashed together. Only difference is my daddy was hip on them Jerry curls, and literally I thank him because I still have my hair. Yeah. All right. Buckeye left an open invitation for Tommy at the Victoria Society. It was on 137th Street. The walk was a mere 7 blocks, but because of his father's health, it took him half an hour to arrive. The Victoria Society consisted of 3 modest rooms on the second floor of an apartment building. It was a Caribbean social club. Down on the street, Tommy and Otis were in Black Harlem. In the Victoria Society, they entered the British West Indies. The flags of every Caribbean nation were fixed to the walls of the long hallway. A much larger Union Jack hung at the far end. At the doorway to the Warren of rooms, Tommy Tester had to give Buckeye's name 3 times. The greeter at the door remained unmoved until Tommy used Buckeye's given name, George Hurley. That worked like a spell. He used his real name. I know that's right. Tommy and Otis followed the greeter at a distance. One of the society's room was reserved for men playing card games or dominoes. The second showed men in lounge chairs smoking and listening to music played at a respectable volume. and the third had card tables set out with tablecloths and chairs for meals. Buckeye had invited Tommy to the Victorian Society many times in the years since they made friends, but Tommy had never come until now. He felt the sting, like a slap across his face. This was a place he described to my aunt, the shorthand for a den of crime and sin, the place where Harlem's worst criminals were too afraid to go. He assumed he knew what kind of place this would be. Buckeye ran numbers for the most famous female gangster in New York City. So why wouldn't the Victorian Society be like those legendary opium dens? Nah, because they move differently. Or had Tommy simply assumed terrible things about this wave of West Indian immigrants? Probably that too. The American Negroes in Harlem got up to awful gossip about those newcomers. And now he come to find the Victorian Society might as well be a British tier room. He felt slightly disappointed. He brought his father because he meant to show his dad a scandalous night. He'd heard women dancing there nearly nothing. So close they practically sat in your lap. Being inside now, seeing this place truly was like learning another world existed within or alongside the world he'd always known. Worst of worst, all this time he'd been too ignorant to realize it. The idea troubled him like a pinched nerve. Tommy and his dad sat and the older man blew out a deep breath. Otis spent a long time adjusting himself in the chair to minimize his back pain. He moved like someone ancient. Otis Tester was 41 years old. Oh God, he moved like someone ancient. That's crazy. A thin woman came to the table offering dinner she'd made in her kitchen, then brought here to sell. She was Trinidadian. Her dinner plates were already prepared, and she rode them through the dining room on a cart. Shahina, pineapple, chow, and macaroni pie, a bowl of cowhill soup, tall cups of passion fruit juice, the whole meal for both men came to $1. I know that's right. Tommy paid. I don't know what any of this mess is, Otis said, watching the plate in front of him like it might strike. Why didn't we go down to Bowles' place? Tommy found himself watching the Trinidadian woman because she reminded him of his own mother. That wiry frame and splay-footed walk. Irene Taster, gone 4 years now. People who knew her well used to call her Michigan because she would never stop talking about a place where her parents came from. She collapsed on a bus, died 37 years old among strangers. Life as a domestic wore her out just as surely as construction did Otis. No lie, that's what my mom told me. Work smarter, not harder, and that's why my goal has been trying to get into places that cause the least amount of stress. And I'm thankful for that opportunity now that I'm going to have to work, but I definitely ain't want my job to be the death of me. Tommy looked at his father, wondering if he'd also been thinking the Trinidadian woman looked like Irene, but the old man only stared down at the plate, mystified. Come on now, Tommy said. There's something here you're going to like. Otis scanned the table, looking for something he recognized. He lifted a fork and poked at the macaroni pie. This is just cheese and noodles, yes? Tommy Tester sank a fork and knife into his serving. He brought a portion to his mouth and chewed. After swallowing, he nodded, but his father prodded at it anyway, as if he didn't trust his son. He set the fork down without eating. Now you say this white man is going to pay you how much? $400? All that just to play at his party? Otis asked. He grabbed a cup of passion fruit juice, brought it to his nose, sniffed, set the drink back down. All that for you to play at his party? Tommy chewed at a bite of pineapple chow. It was sweet, but the kick of lime juice and hot pepper followed so on after. He gulped his juice to cool his throat. That's what he said. Otis raised his hand in the air, held them far apart as he could. That's the distance between What a white man says to a Negro and what he really means. I know that's right. Tommy knew this, of course. Hadn't lived 27, hadn't lived 20 years in America already. His whole hustle entertainment was predicated on the idea that people had ulterior motives for hiring him. I know that's right. When he dressed in those frayed clothes and played at the blues man or the jazz man or even the docile Negro, he knew the role bestowed a kind of power upon him. Give people what they expect, and you can take from them all that you need. They won't realize you've juiced them until they're dry. My aunt had essentially paid him to deliver a worthless item, hadn't she? If she had played the role of quasi gangster to get paid, if he had played the role of quasi gangster to get paid, then so it be. He played the roles needed to enrich his bank account, but all this would sound criminal to Otis or demeaning. The man had an outsider's opinion of dignity. Nobility didn't pay well enough to make Tommy want the job. I'll be real careful, Daddy. Otis Tester watched the son quietly. The rest of the dining room grew louder as more tables filled, but a kind of quiet and bubble of reserve surrounded their table. Otis father to a 20-year-old black boy. Otis was a father to a 20-year-old black boy who blithely explained he'd be going out to Flatbush in the middle of the night into a home of a white man. He might as well told his father he planned to go wrestle a bear. When I left Oklahoma City, Otis Tester said, I rode on the railroads, hoboed all the way east. Not the first time, nor the 500th time Tommy Tester had heard this story. Tommy ate to keep from expressing his disappointment. Hadn't Otis heard the most vital detail? $400. I avoided crossing Arkansas, Otis continued. Whether you were Negro, white, or red man, they were pretty rough on hoboing in Arkansas. They had chain gangs. I went east St. Louis over Evansville. I got taken off the train once in Decatur. I wasn't making a direct route here. I was real young, so I had the need to see much more than my final destination. Finally, Otis Tester ate the macaroni pie as if storytelling had sparked his appetite. He took one bite, chewed cautiously, but after the first, he chomped down two more. Like I said, they took me off the train in Decatur, and that's when it turned out I had to use my head. Now he took the risk of a drink. The passion fruit juice clearly pleased him. He slipped slowly, then sat down to drink. I had to use this. Otis Tester unbuttoned the top two buttons of his shirt right there in the dining room. Tommy stiffened, feeling like a 5-year-old whose daddy was about to shame him in public. But before he could scold his father or reach over and try to cover Otis' exposed skin, the old man pulled something from around his neck. It was hanging there on a coarse string. He slipped it off and clutched it in one hand while he buttoned his shirt again. Tommy leaned forward trying to see what his dad held. Otis Tester extended his hand and opened it. A straight razor laid in his palm. I carried this with me the whole time I rode train, Otis said. White man, Negro, or red Indian was not going to get an easy shot at me. He knocked one end of that razor on the table loudly. In Decatur, I made some people understand this. Otis said, I know that mean he was cutting people up. Yeah, I ain't know. He thought he was going to pull out some Lucky Charm. He'd have pulled out his razor. He ain't playing no games, I guess. Tommy looked from the razor to his father. All his life, he'd known his dad and mom as pillars that stolidly held up the roof of Tommy's world. Reliable, supportive, but not particularly remarkable people. To think of Otis now, suddenly, as a teenage boy who defended himself with this weapon, that past became yet another world, a new dimension of which Tommy had just become aware. Again, the pinch, the pain of such a revelation. I know that's right. You're a grown man and I can't stop you from making your way, Otis said. I wouldn't even want to. But you don't want to walk into that white man's house unarmed or unaware. I know that's right. Anything goes bad, you get out and you get back to me. I know that's right. He gave him that raise. He better get up in there and get a cut, bro. He said, cut your way up out of there. Hey, just like DK, let me tell you something. It's about to be a theme about black men in this time period. DK switched up with that. He had the razor. We got him a razor, but he took a little slight L till he got cut up on his back. Okay. Woo. Tommy Chester nodded, but didn't speak. He simply couldn't right then. I don't care if you got to spill blood to do it, but you get out that house at the end of that job and you get back to me. Otis meant to sound stern, determined, commanding, but Tommy realized he'd never before seen his father look so scared. His pops was, I'd be scared too. You hear me? Otis asked. Yes, sir. Tommy finally answered. They ate quietly, and when the food was gone, they left the Victoria Society, down a flight of stairs and back to Harlem. In 3 nights, Tommy would visit Robert's Saddam, Saddam's mansion. He understood the journey now as travel to another universe. No wonder his father felt fear. His son was about to go so far. Why'd you bring that razor with you tonight? Tommy said. I never knew you owned the thing. Told me you was taking me to that damn Victoria Society, Otis said, almost laughing. Thought I might need the stroke. Thought I might need the stroke if those Caribbeans got wild. But I think you and me were the most dangerous Negroes in the place. I know that's right. So his daddy be in that room, but he had heard about the Victoria Society like everybody else. Tommy had one arm looped through his father's to help the old man walk. The other hand was in his slacks clutching the weapon. If you going to play at that party, Otis Tester said as they ambled back uptown, I've got one more song you should learn. It's old, but it's got something to it. You understand what I'm saying? I'm trying to tell you? The razor is one way I want to arm you. The song is the other. Your mother taught it to me. It's conjure music. We'll practice it for the next 3 days. You got it? I know that's right. She tried to tell him, he about to put him on some hoodoo with music, which is funny. Because a lot of times people don't think music could affect you, but no sound vibrations do. Ask me how I know. I'm a water sign. I'm a Pisces. And when I do my healing sessions, most of it is based on vibrations, waves, sound waves. Yeah. Yes, Pop, Tommy Chester said. Late night in Harlem on Friday, and the streets more full than rush hour. Tommy Chester cherished the closeness to his father and to all the bodies on the sidewalk, in their cars, riding buses, perched on stoops. The traffic and the human voices merged into a terrific buzzing that seemed to lift Tommy and Otis. A song that accompanied them carried them all the way home. Right, so we're on chapter 4 now. I don't know how many chapters it is, but we'll see. 3 days had passed, and this was the third night, and Tommy Tester left the safety of Harlem. He rode the same route to Flatbush that he'd done when he met Robert Saddam, but now the journey felt more threatening because the sun was down. If he stood out amongst the train riders in the early morning, he might as well have been carrying a star in one hand rather than his guitar case now. Throughout the train car, people squinted at him. At 4 different times, white men asked him exactly where he was going. These weren't offers to help him get there. If he didn't have exact location, Robert Sidham's mansion on Martigny Street, he believed he would have been thrown off the train or under it. When he arrived at the station, he was trailed by 3 loud-talking young men. The loud talk concerned Tommy. Tommy tried his best to not listen to it because he knew they were trying to scare him. If he shouted back, turned to a fight, that would be the end of the night. No money earned, just a trip to jail. The streets of Flatbush became less crowded, more residential, and the younger men quickened their pace. Tommy wore his father's razor around his neck like an amulet, but even that wouldn't help him against three man's shoe. But he lived them a lesson, boy, unless they got razors too. By the time Tommy reached the grove of trees surrounding Saddam's house, the three young men were near enough that Tommy felt them at his heels. One walked so close the toes of one foot repeatedly kicked the back of Tommy's guitar case. Tommy saw the mansion now, 2 stories and dimly lit, glowing from within the trees. If he'd been alone, he would have fought. He would have found the sight frightening. But because of his escorts, Tommy ran toward it. He crossed on to Robert Saddam's property. If he made it to the door, he might let him in before the white boys landed any blows. He didn't understand. He was running until he was out of breath. When he looked back, 3 young men no longer followed. They remained at the fence line of the property. Even stranger, they no longer watched him. Instead, they watched the Saddam home. They cowered before it. Tommy finally saw that these boys were younger than him, maybe 15 or 16. Children, studying the Saddam home with fear. Relief, but oh no, chapter 4 ain't over that quick. Chapter 4, 2 pages? Wait a minute. I guess it is. My bad. I ain't know chapter 4 is going to be 2 pages. Relief played from Tommy's eyes to his heels. Tommy crouched, looking for a stone. He found one the size of a baseball and weighed it in his palm. He set down the guitar. He wanted to hit the biggest of the 3 young men, but they still hadn't returned their gazes to him. It was as if the house had mesmerized them. No better moment than this to take aim. He made a wish that the rock take out one of their eyes. Then the door of the mansion opened. Barely a squeak behind Tommy, but enough to make all 3 boys literally hop. They bolted like kittens, wriggling and meowing. Behind Tommy, there was a groan as someone stepped out the front door and onto the boards of the mansion wraparound porch. If you blind one of them, the police will be called. This wasn't said sternly, almost with amusement. Tommy Tester turned to find Robert Saddam coming down the stairs, one hand out. Tommy gave him the rock, and Robert Saddam waited in his hand as Tommy had done. Rather than throwing it back into the dirt, he slipped the stone into his pocket of his coat. Now he looked at Tommy expectantly. The moment lingered. Saddam waited. Tommy took a full minute to remember the word his father instructed him to use. Ashmedai. Tommy finally said it quietly. Robert Saddam nodded and turned and walked back up the porch steps. When he entered the mansion, he left the front door open for Tommy to follow. Oh God, I might need to blow my nose. Hold on one second. I'm not there. It's bothering me. Take that up. I don't think blowing your nose is good. Yes. All right. Maybe I should practice my authoritarian voice. My blanket back now was over here comfortable. All right, so chapter 5. Ooh, Jesus. Make sure chapter 5 ain't no 2 pages. All right. I guess I ain't won't go into too much detail on the travel to the mansion. The cloak of trees around the mansion did a great deal to hide its age, its infirmity, but inside there was no cover. The floorboards were old and poorly maintained. They looked splintered and parched. When Tommy entered the home, the entryway was lit by a single electric lamp, and he found the same in all three rooms on the first floor. This caused, this caused the edges of each room to lie in shadows, and it became difficult for Tommy to really understand the dimensions of each space, as if the mansion's interior was larger than its exterior. The smell of age, meaning undifferentiated time, had settled throughout the home, a musty odor, as if the winds of the present never blow through here. And I know that's right. It's just old times. Um, Robert Saddam led Tommy down the long first floor hallway, and Tommy clutched the handle of his guitar case as if it were a guideline leading back to the front door. Down the steps, out the front yard, out of Flatbush, back onto the train to Harlem, and by his father's side. While they walked, the old man almost trotting, Tommy felt his guitar case jiggling as it had when the white boys had been kicking at it as they followed him. This spurred a suspicion that something else was following them now. Twice the case almost flew out his grip, but Tommy couldn't make himself look back into the darkness of the long hallway. Instead, he only followed faster. Saddam opened up a set of double doors and entered a room so brightly lit, Tommy squinted as he followed. As soon as he was inside, Saddam pushed one of the doors shut, then the other. Just before he shut the second, Saddam peeked into the hallway. Tommy felt distinctly there'd been another presence trailing behind him. Then Saddam actually spoke, a single mumbled word, a command, before the old man shut the door and locked it. Only then could Tommy turn to take in this room with its high ceilings. It had to be the size of an entire apartment Tommy and Otis shared. It might be larger. It had three towering walls of inset shelving, every one full of books. In addition to the books on the shelves, there were others spread across the floors, towers of tomes stacked as high as Tommy's shoulder. I've read them all, Saddam said, and yet there's still so much I must learn. Man, listen, you can read for the rest of your life and still won't read everything. Tommy stood the guitar case by his side like an upright rifle. I'd say you earned yourself a break. Saddam shook his head faintly. If only there were time for rest. I know that's right. There is no rest for the weary. Saddam walked to the far end of the room, toward the high windows running along the wall. A single great chair stood by the sill. Saddam sat in it. His feet dangled, not touching the floor. A strange sight because he wasn't a short man, and the chair didn't seem oversized either. The old man's shoes swayed 3 inches from the floorboards, and Tommy watched them, confused by the incongruity. Then, as if Saddam had noticed Tommy's interest, the feet lowered to the ground. But Saddam hadn't moved the rest of his body. Instead, it was as if the old man, by some power, made his legs grow at will. It was so odd. Visually, Tommy actually became nauseated. Tommy looked away and back again. Sure enough, Saddam's feet were flat on the floor. He waved a hand to catch Tommy's attention. Won't you play now? He asked. There was an edge in his tone, as if trying to get Tommy to mind on something other than the strangeness, shape shifting he swore he'd just seen. Tommy looked around the library. Only the other guest seems to be what? Okay. Tommy looked around the library. The only other guest seemed to be the books. The party is tomorrow night, Saddam said. But I felt like meeting with you tonight first. If you didn't think I was paying you that much money to play for one evening, did you? No, sir, Tommy said. Whatever you like. He opened the guitar case and took out the instrument. He had, in fact, expected to play be paid to play for one evening because that's exactly what the man promised 3 days earlier. But a wealthy man reality is remade at will. I know that's right. Saddam reached in his coat pocket and revealed a fold of bills so thick it choked down all of Tommy Test's pride. Saddam set it on the windowsill, then grinned at Tommy. Tommy strummed and played as expected. The old man stared out the windows. Mercifully, the man wanted to talk more than he wanted Tommy to play. Tommy only had 4 songs in his repertoire, after all, including the one his father recently taught him. After playing for nearly 30 minutes, Tommy's fingers and shoulders and the small of his back ached terribly. He slowed his playing, strummed lightly, until he simply hummed in the cavernous old library. Finally, Saddam, who had once looked away from the great window, cleared his throat and spoke. And it is my belief that an awful lord is not dead yet, he said. Saddam wasn't speaking to Tommy, just reciting something he half remembered. But Tommy, slightly dazed from the strangeness of this engagement, still responded. I'm sorry, sir, he asked and instantly regretted. Robert Saddam turned away from the windows irritably and glared at Tommy's as if he'd caught a burglar breaking in his home. Normally, when a white man gave Tommy this look, he had a series of useful defenses. Looking down at his feet objectively often worked. A smile might sometimes do. Tommy tried to later. Well, what could you be grinning at? Saddam demanded. A third option considered in a panic was to get his father's razor out and cut the old man's throat. Jesus Christ. Tommy couldn't imagine making it to the train. A Negro through this white neighborhood at damn near midnight. He might as well be Satan strolling through Eden. And if they found him with that wad of money, well, he'd be fortunate if the police were called. They might only beat him, then take him to jail. Much worse would happen if he got snatched by a mob. No razor then. He was, in essence, trapped here until morning. I asked you something, Saddam said, and when I speak, I expect a response. No good deflections left. So Tommy Tester raised his head and returned Saddam's gaze. Might as well try honesty. I'm confused, he said. Of course you are, Saddam said. The veil of ignorance has been set over your face since birth. Shall I pull it free? Tommy pursed his lips, trying to decide his best response. So far, honesty had worked. At least the old man wasn't glaring at him. Show money, Tommy said. Saddam clapped. Do you know why I hired you? Why I was drawn to you 3 days past? I could see you. And I don't mean this charade. Saddam extended one hand and gestured from Tommy's purposefully scuffed boots to his well-worn suit to his guitar. I saw that you understood illusion and that you were, in your way, casting a powerful spell. I admired it. I felt a kinship with you, I suppose, because I too understand illusion. Hmm. I'm listening if it's raining. I don't think so, but yeah, that illusion thing is an interesting thing because I never thought as it disguises as illusion, and in that way, I had to think of way I cultivate illusions. Saddam rose from his chair and faced the wall of a tall windows. The old man tapped at one pane lightly. Because all the lights in the library, it was impossible to see outside into the night. The windows had turned into sort of a screen, reflecting Tommy and Saddam in an expensive library. Saddam waved Tommy over, and as he walked closer, Tommy thought he saw movement behind him. The reflected image of the library's double doors buckled twice, as if someone were in the hallway trying to push them open. Tommy turned quickly, but the doors weren't moving now. Tommy couldn't make himself turn back to Saddam yet. Your people, Robert Saddam began, your people are forced to live in mazes of hybrid squalor. It's all sound and filth and spiritual putridance. If anything could pull Tommy Test's attention from the door, it would be this. He turned to Robert Saddam, expecting to find the man sneering. But the man had one hand on his belly, patting it gently. He looked up and to the right like a man trying to remember a speech. Policemen despair of order or reform and seek rather to erect barriers protecting the outside world from the contagion, he continued. Tommy held the neck of the guitar tightly. You talking about Harlem? The spell broke. What? Saddam said. Oh, damn you. Why did you interrupt? I'm trying to understand what in the hell place you're talking about. It doesn't sound like anywhere I've lived. No applause for honesty this time. Mind your tone, Saddam said. He covered the money with one hand. You haven't been paid yet. This motherfucker. Tommy Chester thought and looked and took a step closer to the old man. Even Robert Saddam, for all his authority, sensed the change in the room. For a moment, he looked like a man who realized a meteorite was about to crash into his planet. He raised an open hand, a gesture of peace. Tomorrow night, you'll be playing at my party, Saddam said, and the guests will be men like you, Negroes from Harlem, Syrians and Spanish from Red Hook, Chinese and Italians from Five Points. All of them will be here by my invitation. All of them will hear what I'm now telling you. Tommy's temper became cooled by his curiosity. A white man's home crowded with Negroes, Syrians, and all the rest. So now might be the strangest job he ever stumbled into yet. So why do I get a preview? Tommy asked. I needed to practice my words, Saddam said, to see how they affect the man of the proper type. Also, I admit you were convenient. Saddam said I needed those police to give me some room. The time they spent with you was enough for me to slip away. I thank you for that. You knew you were being followed? My family has doubts about my sanity. This is what they say. More likely, they have doubts about my will and to whom exactly I leave this home and all its contents. Which of them will inherit the land on which it all sits? But they don't see it that way. Nobody ever thinks of himself as the villain, does he? Even monsters hold high opinions of themselves. Listen, they do. I've heard people belittle some of the worst acts. I was talking to a girl one time. We were talking about her daughter. And she was like, my daughter ain't been through no bad experience like that. The only thing she ever had to deal with was homelessness when we was homeless and domestic violence. And I sat there thinking, I'm like, girl, you don't want to be a villain in your daughter's story, so you belittling that. But homelessness or domestic violence alone is enough to make some people turn to crack. So, and that domestic violence was at least 10 years of that girl's life. So, yeah, it was interesting. My family is convinced I'm in danger. They've made the police believe the same. They hired that private detective too, the brutish one. His name is Mr. Howard. Mr. Howard and the detective alone are collecting proof of my mental inferiority. For my own good, of course. Tommy laughed. Talking to a Negro on the street won't help you look sane. Damn, sure won't. So now took his head off the money and turned towards the window fully. He leaned with both hands against the ledge. I know that I'm highborn. I mean that my family's old wealth and their bearing in history should afford me all the comfort I need. But comfort can be a cage, you know. Certainly it can stunt the mind. I know that's right. Time spent with my family, with my old friends and means, began to feel like bathing in porridge, drowning in a child's meal. So I sought out others, entirely unlike myself. And when they spoke of secret wisdom, I listened. What men like myself would dismiss as superstition or worse, pure evil, I learned to cherish. That's funny. That's like this Reiki. I've had people question. I'm like, is he doing devil work now? Like what? First of all, what's devil work? Since you know so much, tell me. Because I have no idea. The more I read, the more I listen, the more sure I became that great and secret show had been playing throughout my life, throughout all of our lives. But the masses of us were too ignorant or too frightened to raise our eyes and watch, because to watch would be to understand the play isn't being staged for us. To learn, we simply do not matter to the players at all. Now he touched the window, tapping it, and the reflection seemed for an instant to ripple, as if they were staring into a pool of water rather than panes of glass. There is a king who sleeps at the bottom of the ocean. And Saddam said this, against all possibilities, the window pane took on a color, an apparent depth of the sea. It was as if Tommy Test and Robert Saddam, standing in this room, in this mansion, in this city, were peering down into distant waters elsewhere in the globe. The guitar fell out of Tommy's hand as the image appeared. That thump, the guitar fell out of Tommy's hand as the image appeared. The thump made it the sour note that played once. These hardly registered. A rush of cold seemed to enter not only the room, but also Tommy's bones. Saddam said the return of the sleeping king would mean an end to your people's wretchedness, the end of all the wreck and squalor of billions of lives. When he rises, he wipes away the follies of mankind, and he is only one of many. There are great old ones. Their footfalls cause mountains to topple. One gaze strikes 10 million bodies dead. But imagine the fortunes of those of us who were allowed to survive. The reward for those of us who helped the seeking king wake. Saddam tapped the window again, and the ocean truly, what? Saddam tapped the window again, and the ocean. Truly, Tommy was seeing a vast and distant sea in the windows, churned, heaved, and from the depths of a shape, too massive to be real, stirred. Tommy's throat tightened. He didn't want to see this. He thought he might shatter the wall of the windows with his own hands if that thing in the sea depths became visible, distinct. I know that's right. But then the image shifted, the perspective rising, leaving the sea far below. They left continents behind. Was it possible they left the world? They rose in the night sky. It really seemed as if these two men in the house in Flatbush were now adrift in the farthest space. Tommy Tester clutched at the windowsill for balance. Boy, they sound like they on my shroom trip. They seeing interesting things in Jesus Christ. Yeah, that's kind of how I go too. You tap the window, yeah. Windows are portals, reflections are portals. But I don't know. I wouldn't definitely want to be looking at reflections. You stay away from mirror reflections and stuff like that at that time, which can be interesting. Okay, side note. From here, you might understand, Robert Snum said quietly, but Tommy didn't understand. He only wanted desperately to be home. He let go of the windowsill, turned, and picked up his guitar, and he ran across the library. He ran towards the locked doors. Robert Saddam shouted after him in indecipherable words. Tommy barreled through the stacks of books on the floor, sent them flying. He wanted to be home with his father. Damn the cost. If he'd stared out that window any longer, something terrible would have happened to his soul. And not necessarily terrible would have happened to his soul, but yeah, that heated blanket jumping. I'm trying to read some of the comments. Uh, yeah, but his fear is genuine because you gotta be careful with reflections if you in a state like that. Because just shit can get in and out. Doot, 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 doot. For all his confidence about his hustle, he understood that Robert Saddam was playing with the more potent force. He reached the double doors of the library and he opened them. And Malone, the police officer, stood in the hallway. Malone with his service revolver pointed forward. What? Tommy said, what? Tommy clutched at the doorknob. His other hand he held with his guitar. He expected to die as soon as Malone pulled the trigger. Was this who'd been behind him when they first entered Saddam's home? Had Malone been the one kicking at his guitar? But then Tommy realized something strange about Malone, or about Malone's surroundings. While Tommy stood in the library of Saddam's home, Malone stood in what looked like a lobby of an apartment building, and most certainly not the hallway of Robert Saddam's estate. What the hell is going on? It was as if two locations, mansion and tenement lobby, had been stitched together by some haphazard tailor. Tommy Tester and Detective Malone facing each other because of a bad splice of reality's fabric, and actually both men looked mystified. In a moment, Robert Saddam's breathless reached the library's doors and threw them shut. Then he slapped Tommy Tester in the face. What did you see? Saddam shouted. Tell me. I don't understand, Tommy said quietly. Was it him? Saddam yelled. He reached into the pocket of his coat and pulled a stone out he'd taken from Tommy. He raised it, intended to break Tommy. Oh God, dog. Intended to break open Tommy Tester's skull. Did the king see you? The cop, Tommy said, almost breathless. The skinny one. Saddam held the stone high for 2 moments more. Malone? Then he lowered the rock. Only Malone? He said quietly to himself. I don't understand where I've ended up, Tommy said. Saddam breathed deeply, swallowing. We can't leave this room there, he explained. Not till morning. If Tommy looked baffled, it was because he was baffled. If we try opening that door again, the results would be even stranger than what you've just seen and potentially more dangerous. Tommy looked back at the doors. His forehead went cold. Malone was standing in that hallway. But wasn't your hallway out there? I believe you, Saddam said. But believe me, it could have been worse. You might have opened the door and encountered. Saddam moved himself between Tommy and the doors and stayed there the rest of the night. Let's see how long chapter 6 is. Okay, we'll read chapter 6. We can blow through that. I need to see how many chapters is in this thing. Okay, good. We want 18. Chapter 6. Let me get a little drink of drink. Okay, so we got 2 people watching. Congratulations, joining. Oh God. Leave a comment, like, follow. Yeah, I'm gonna have to move this because I can't see some of the comments because they keep showing this event list mess. Charles, yeah, he Blake is jumping right now. Oh my God. Charles Thomas Tester left Robert Saddam's home at 7 the next morning. When the sun rose, they could peek outside the windows and see the streets of Flatbush again. That's when Saddam said it was safe to open the library doors. Before then, all throughout the night, Saddam explained his home had been outside. The term, the idea seemed commonplace to the old man, but Tester had a terrible time understanding. The mansion had been outside, but of course it was. Where else could a mansion be? This hadn't been the old man's meaning, though. Finally, Saddam described it this way. Yeah, it definitely sounded like he took him on a trip because you can definitely time travel. I know when I took one of my people on a trip, they definitely was taking my place other places. Like at one point I'm like, well, you got us. Imagine a strip of medical tape with adhesive gum on one side. Then a tiny ball of cloth is dropped onto the center of that tape. My library is that ball of cloth in what we call normal time and space. I know that's right. It isn't affixed to one place, one plane. But then imagine crumpling the adhesive tape as tight as your fist. That ball of cloth now touches not just one surface, but many. In this way, my library travels beyond human perceptions, human limitations of space, and even time. Those are meaningless strictures in the cosmic scale they are. Tonight we travel quite far. Though it seemed to you we were always in Flatbush, we weren't. We went to we went to the shadow haunted outside. What? One of the places we grabbed. Huh? One of the places. Well, you keep talking about the Sleeping King, man. I want us to like that Netflix show. What's that? The Netflix show, Sandman. That's what it is. One of the places we traveled was the threshold of the Sleeping King, his resting place at the bottom of the sea. We were so close that with some effort, I might have reached out to touch his face, seeing his great eyes open. But last night was not the proper time. Not quite. When you ran to the library doors and breached them, I feared my years of planning had failed because of one panicked Negro. But we enjoyed some luck instead. All you saw was the cadaverous detective alone. There had been there had been much more like this. 4 hours. Saddam rattling off names, or rather entities, as effortlessly as the preachers who crowded certain Harlem corners. But Tommy focused on the idea of the blip of cloth inside the ball of medical tape. This concrete image made the impossible easier to grasp. Hadn't he seen an ocean through the windows? Hadn't he witnessed the planet from a vantage point of the stars? Had Malone been on the other side of the double doors looking desperate and bewildered? Throughout the night, Robert Saddam returned to this sleeping king. Like the planet revolves around the sun, the sleeping king. At some point, Saddam called this being by another name, his true name, but Tommy Testa could never recall it, or perhaps his mind chose not to. When the sun rose, Robert Saddam concluded with one final piece of wisdom. He retrieved the stone from his pocket again. This time he pressed the rock into Tommy's palm. How much did this one stone matter to you, to your existence before you picked it up, to use it on those boys who followed you? That's how little humanity's silly struggles matter to the sleeping king. When he returns, all the petty human evils, such as the ones visited on your people, will be swept away by his mighty hand. Isn't that marvelous? And what what will become of those who are left, the ones who helped him? Think of the rewards. I know you're a man who believes in such things. You're smart enough to make sure they come to you. Then Saddam handed over $200 and walked Testa out of his home. Tommy remained on the porch long after Saddam shut the door. A bright morning in Flatbush. That's what Tommy saw. But he had a tough time walking down the steps, the down tree-lined path, and out to the sidewalk. He kept expecting he'd set one foot off the porch and fall right into the ocean where the sleeping king waited. And why couldn't this happen? That's what paralyzed him. If all the rest could be true, then why not so much else? Hmm. Finally, the feeling of the roll bills in his hand returned him to the porch. He looked down at the money and told himself this was enough. $200 would support Tommy and Otis for almost half a year. Go back to Harlem now and never return. Robert Saddam would never find him because he never told the old man where he lived. Whatever Saddam had planned meant less than nothing to him. Let the old man have his magic. Otis and Tommy would spend the night at the Victorian Society, talking and eating well. He would make it back to his father as he promised. That was enough. Tommy squeezed the bills once more, then dropped the roll into the sound hole of his guitar. It fell with a gratifying thump. He slipped the guitar back into the case and one hand in his pocket coat. The stone Saddam had returned him rested inside. Instead of dropping the rock back into the dirt, Tommy took it with him. And eventually he'd spend the money, but the stone would serve as a souvenir of the night he'd been outside. On the train back to Harlem, Tommy didn't notice anyone else, and if they noticed him, he was unaware. The conductor made no small talk this time. Maybe Tester cut an odd figure, a Negro in worn clothes with a guitar at his feet and his attention focused on a stone in his hand. He must have looked feeble-minded and thus unthreatening, thus invisible. He's out there swear he's looking feeble-minded. Let's see again. All right, I feel like reading one more chapter. I actually like this book, and I've been going through it, so I won't. I'll be trying not to make sure don't read it myself. Harlem, only away for a night, but he missed the company. The strangest moment came when it was time to pay, and he had to fish into his guitar for the bills. The counter woman looked uninterested right up until the roll appeared, as thick as the middle of a Burmese python. Tommy liked the way she looked at him after he paid from that knot. Even better, when he put down a whole dollar for a tip. Could Robert Saddam really make a man like Tommy a prince in this new world? Wouldn't that be damn fine? By the time he left the shop, he changed his mind about returning to Saddam's place. The old man had been right. Tommy Tester did enjoy a good reward. At 10 in the morning, he approached his block, sunlight kissing the face and facade. The streets weren't as tranquil. He hadn't noticed the traffic when he left the counter, but by now, the streets clearly had a clog. The roads had become more flooded as he approached 144th. His block looked positively underwater. 3 police cruisers, 4 Model T two-door sedans were parked midway down the block, and a much bigger police emergency trucks behind them. Tester moved slowly. The sidewalk so dense with bystanders that people filled every stoop too. The only time he'd ever seen Harlem this crowded was when the 369th regime marched Manhattan in 1919 after returning from the war. Halfway down the block, the police had thrown up a barricade. Cops stood in pairs, keeping all the gawkers back. By now, Tommy saw what they were blocking everyone from entering the specific building, his building. Tommy made it to the edge of the crowd, right up to the barricades, and waited. Malone appeared at the building's front entrance. Mr. Howard moved beside him. They what? They came down the steps. They came down the steps at the same pace, with the same gait, and for the moment, Mr. Howard became Detective Malone's shadow. 2 more police in uniform came out seconds later and shook the hands of both men. Then Malone looked up and found Tommy instantly, as if he'd been sensitive to test his sense. He pointed, and the 2 patrolmen ran to the barricade. The first grabbed Tester's neck, just as Howard had done in the first meeting in Brooklyn, and the other patrolman grabbed another Negro who happened to be standing there. They led both men around the barricade to Malone. "Not that one," Malone said, pointing at the second man. The patrolman looked slightly abashed, but then routinely went through the other Negroes' pockets. God dang. When nothing illegal was discovered, he pushed the man back toward the crowd. No words had been shared between the two. When the man reached the crowd again, he simply turned, like the others, to watch what they do to Charles Thomas Tester. Your father's dead, Malone said. This this was reported neither with relish nor with sympathy. In a way, Tester liked this best. No pretense of concern. Your father is dead. Outwardly, Tester took the news with great calm. Inwardly, he felt the sun close its distance from the earth. It came near enough to melt the great majority of Tommy's internal organs. A fire ran through his body, but couldn't show it. He couldn't open his mouth to ask what happened to Otis because he'd forgotten he had a mouth. He stood there blank as a stone. Tell me my father's dead, and I'm going to take a swing at you, Mr. Howard said. But these people really don't have the same connections to each other as we do. That's been scientifically proven. They're like ants and bees, Mr. Howard waved one hand at the building beside him. That's why they can live like this. Tommy felt the weight of the stone in his pocket. Your father is dead. He only had to reach it, swiftly bring it out, and spill these white man brains in the street. Your father is dead. The certainty of his own demise moments after brought him no fear. Your father is dead. He would have done this right away, but simply he couldn't move. Mr. Mr. Howard watched Tommy a moment longer, but when there was still no reaction, he spoke in a more matter-of-fact tone as if addressing a grand jury. I approached the home at approximately 7 this morning, Mr. Howard began. After finding apartment 53, I knocked several times. After receiving no answer, I checked the door and found it unlocked. I entered the apartment, clearing each room in order until I reached the back room. In that room, a male Negro was discovered displaying a rifle. In fear for my life, I used my revolver. What? Oh, so they went in there to kill his daddy because you ain't had no business in there in that apartment, period. Tessa couldn't understand how he remained upright. Why wasn't he collapsing? For the moment, he felt himself, his mind at least, slipping out of his skull. He wasn't there. He was outside. Didn't even need to be in Saddam's library to make the trip. Mr. Howard pointed at the building. Because of the orientation of the apartment, the back room faces an air shaft. This left the room in darkness. After defending myself, it was discovered that the assailant had not been brandishing a rifle. Jesus Christ, he shot him for no reason. Malone, who had been watching Testa steadily, offered it was a guitar. Jesus Christ. Mr. Howard nodded. In the dark, this was impossible to know. Of course. Detective Malone was called to the scene. He'll be writing up the report exactly as I've explained. Testa looked from one man to the other. Tessa's voice finally returned to him. But why were you here at all? He asked. Why did you come to my home? Mr. Howard was hired to track down stolen merchandise, Malone said. My father never stole a thing in his life. Not your father, Mr. Howard, but how about you? Malone's long face slackened, and he pawed through the pockets of his coat. Finally, Malone retrieved the pad, a policeman's notebook, and flipped through a series of pages. Arcane symbols and indecipherable words were scrawled across each page of Malone's book. Tommy doubted Malone's notes had anything to do with police work. He thought of Robert Saddam's library, so full of esoteric learning. Malone's notebook might be a journal of the same unspeakable knowledge. Finally, Malone came to a largely empty doop, doop, page, a few numbers written across the top. He showed the page to Tommy. Tommy knew it instantly at Maud's address in Queens. I'm going to tell you what I think, Malone began. You figured you found a loophole in the job you did for that old woman. You followed the exact wording on your contract. You figured this made it impossible for Maud to come after you. Because you hadn't broken the rules, But it's 1924, Mr. Tester, not the Middle Ages. Her sorcery couldn't get you, so she hired out for help. She employed Mr. Howard. Now, Mr. Howard patted his coat. As I moved to kill your father's rifle, I learned it was a guitar, and I then discovered the page I needed hidden right inside. Don't you understand why I kept the page from her? Chester asked. Don't you understand what she can do with that book? Mr. Howard laughed and looked at Malone. Did this man just confess a crime? Malone shook his head. Let it alone, he said. You understand? Chester said, glancing at Malone's notebook. The detective flicked the cover shut, slid the pages back into his pocket. I understand you weren't home. Mr. Howard arrived, Malone said. As a result, your father was left vulnerable. It's my fault then? Tommy asked. Will you be putting that into your report too? Mr. Howard's mouth opened slightly, an undisguised expression of surprise. I hate the lippy ones, he said. Malone, meanwhile, seemed nonplussed. Want to tell me where you were last night? Malone asked. Or shall I guess? Charles Thomas Chester had a sudden flash, an image of his father, half asleep, looking up to find some white man in the doorway in the semi-dark. What did Otis Chester think at that moment? Was there a time, at least, to picture his loving wife or the son who'd worship him? Was there time for a breath, an exclamation? Time for a prayer? Maybe better imagine Otis never woke up. That made it easier on Tommy, at least. How many times did you shoot my father? Chester asked. I felt in danger for my life. Boy, they've been saying, God dang. Whoa, Jesus Christ. He said, Mr. Howard said, I emptied my revolver. Then I reloaded it and did it again. Chester's tongue felt too large for his mouth, and for the first time he thought he might cry out. He felt the weight of the stone in his pocket heavier now, as if dragging him down to the ground. His night with Robert Saddam returned to him, all of it, all at once. The breathless terror with which the old man spoke of the sleeping king, a fear of cosmic indifference suddenly seemed comical or downright naive. Tessa looked back at Malone and Mr. Howard. Beyond them, he saw the police forces at barricades as they muscled the crowd of Negroes back. He saw the decaying facade of his tenement with new eyes. He saw the patrol cars parked in the middle of the road like three great black hounds waiting to pounce on all these gathered sheep. What was the indifference compared to malice? Indifference would have been such a relief. I know that's right. So it's been fun this week. We're gonna wrap up. And we still got about 50 pages to go, which is good. And we'll start with chapter 8 next week. I thank you for joining you. At some point, I guess we're gonna figure it out with this multi-screaming. But I know we could. At least I can get on YouTube. So, thanks for joining. Hope you enjoy the reading. I was off Tuesday, so we ain't do no live on Tuesday, but we will be back in business next Tuesday. I got a couple of readings. I did a couple of readings since then, and so I think we might do a couple of videos or something like that. We'll figure it out. But Happy New Year, and I'll see y'all in 2024.